So I had an opportunity to have my own show on Maker Park Radio, simply because my neighbor started the station and she was like, anyone can have a show. And I said, maybe I can too. And I was a new mom and I wasn't writing and I was feeling really disconnected from myself as a writer and from my writing community. So I thought this would be a way to get me back into that mindset, into that world. And I think I've had 4 or 5 shows. I started a monthly talk show on Maker Park Radio. It's called Cut Paste Radio. And I interview a different writer each month. We sit down for an hour and a half to talk about their work, their process. And then at the end of the show, the guest selects a playlist of music that they'd like to share that's either related to their work somehow or their life as a writer. And it's been super inspiring, and my goal is to highlight the literary artists living and working on Staten Island and to bring the literary arts to the island. So my next show is January 20th, and I'm having Mary Gannon on. She was the editor of Poets and Writers magazine for 5 or so years, and now she's at the Academy of American Poets, and she lives on Staten Island. The next month I'm doing, are there any writer moms in the room? Okay. So I'm doing a show with other moms who are writers. It's like a self-directed residency called the Residency in Motherhood. So we started a Facebook group. If you know other writers who are moms, they can join us. And we are selecting a 4-day weekend in February where we're creating our own residency at home. And then we're going to share our experience on the show. After that, I'm having the current editor-in-chief of Poet and Writers magazine, who also lives on Staten Island and happens to be married to Mary Gannon, on the show. And then I have shows about social justice in the writing classroom. I have a show about a woman who does illustrated video children's stories. So check it out. It's fiorestory.com is my website. Or you can just go to Maker Park Radio and look for me. The show is a video recording also, which just started, so you don't have to watch us live. You can just watch, look at the archive. And I hope that it's a resource for writers to just hear about other people's process, their thinking behind their work, and to expose you to new voices. And I also wanted to share that next weekend there's a fundraiser for the radio station at Craft House. If you just go to makerparkradio.nyc, you can learn about that. So I'm really excited to hear everyone read tonight. Thanks for having me.
Is that better? Mm-hmm. A little bit up. For our quiet readers. Yeah, there we go. So I see a few familiar faces and a few not so much, and that is really, really exciting. So basically what I want to start off by saying is thank you, Stella, for coming and visiting us and also for sharing about your radio show. I think it's really important that we all stick together and sort of support each other as we get out there, as we write, as we do our thing. Because sometimes being writers, you get stuck in your room, you get stuck at your desk, and you think you're the only one doing what you're doing. And that closes you out from some really helpful point of views. And speaking of point of views, part of what got me into writing, and maybe we'll share afterwards, I'd like to actually, with other writers, part of what got me into writing was I always loved sci-fi, and I was always interested in virtual reality. I thought, how cool would it be if I could see what it's like to live in the Serengeti with a lion, or what would it be like to be on the steps of the Great Wall of China? And little did I know that writing, journalism, fiction, nonfiction, is the closest thing to virtual reality. And that's what I love about reading, is that it transports you into somebody else's shoes and it shows you exactly what it's like to be, touch, smell, taste, hearing. And I think that reading is more important than ever. Studies show that people who read fiction are actually more empathetic towards other people that are unlike them. And I think that maybe you guys have noticed this in a world where, bless you, in a world where we are sort of shrinking back into our echo chambers and we only want to hear what other people agree with. It's more important than ever to put yourself in someone else's shoes and hear what it's like to be another human being. So, without further ado, I want to bring a very humanistic poet up. Zach actually teaches, and also teaches creative writing to his students in the inner city. Zach, I can't wait to have you read to us. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm really excited to be here.
Woo-woo!
And thanks for braving the cold. It was difficult to get out of the house the last few days. I'll definitely say. So I like I was saying, I do a lot of things. I teach. That's one of them. I sort of mentor a lot of younger creative writers in my own way. But while I'm teaching, while I'm doing all this stuff, I'm always involved in my own writing and thinking about how I'm going to express myself in my writing, specifically poetry. And the biggest influence, I think, for my writing over the past decade or so has been my 20s, being in your 20s. For those of you that are in your 20s or have been in your 20s, it's kind of a really scary time, but it's a really cool time, right? Because so many things are happening, and you know that so many things are going to happen. And the scary part of it is you're seeing that the people that you grew up with are having all of them are participating in all this stuff, and you're like, am I going to do that? So it's I remember 5 years ago, right, I was at parties with my friends, and they're crying, and they're kind of out there crying and telling me that they love me. And now they're doing the same thing at their wedding, and that they're going to do the same thing when their kid's born. And I was thinking about those events, and I wrote this poem. It's called Advice to a Child That I Hope to One Day Have. Or, subtitle, Touch, Don't Bruise, or The Product of Too Much Love. And it's sort of a nod to the great playwright August Wilson. 1. The world is not your oyster. Oysters are often very expensive, and although delicious, they are not always fresh. Depending on when and where you go, they can make you sick. On second thought, maybe the world is your oyster, but you are the pearl. 2. You are a prize. Be prize. Never sell yourself short. Never sell yourself at all. Always understand that what you have to offer the world cannot be bought, cannot be labeled, cannot be anything other than unique. 3. Life is tough, and if you are lucky, it is long. And when you take a trip, like the cross-country trip I hope we will take when you are old enough to share driving responsibilities, we will go through states. Some short and dull, like Delaware. Some long and sunny, like Florida. Some anxious and bustling, like New York, where it is important to be lucky, and the destination will be that much sweeter when we look behind us to see how far we have come. Isolation is not independence. Girls are not women. Boys are not gentlemen. Do not confuse them. Do not be tricked. Tricks are for kids. 5. Enjoy being a kid. I will enjoy watching you as a kid, and even more so, watching you grow. But be warned, I do not adjust easily. I will try to keep you in my grasp. To quote August Wilson, sometimes when he touched, he bruised. And sometimes when he took me in his arms, he cut. Do not let me squeeze too tight like fathers before me. I have enough to show for the two of us to read. 6. I am happy that you are your own person with your own life. And I may convince myself that you no longer want to spend your time with me. Please reassure me that you habitate your own world. And I am so much a part of that world. Keep on into the life that you so much deserve. And when you venture far, to discover a new home, to find new territory, to uncover passion, and to unravel love, know that when you look back, you will find me. This next one, I wrote 2 weeks ago during the holidays. During the holidays, I was thinking about how little kids write letters to Santa. And how I thought it was a little bit silly because no one will ever really read those letters. Not the person that they're addressed to, at least. Right? Santa will never read those letters. But then I thought that, I kind of write letters like that all the time. Right? I write them in my daily commute. I write them to people that I don't know. Right? I want to say things to these people that I don't know. And then later I record it. And that's art. And so little kids are artists. And that's awesome. And this next poem is called Juxtaposition to a Smile. And it's a collection of just little notes that I wrote one day throughout my daily commute in New York City. Dear old man who walked into Starbucks, stuffed his pockets with fistful of Splenda packets and left. I see you. Dear middle-aged man at the 49th Street NQRW station who asks me to swipe him in. I'm sorry. Dear pregnant woman in the sweater, I did not take that open seat so you would not have to stand, but that guy who sat down before you totally sucks. By the shake of your head, I know that you will raise your baby with better manners. Dear traffic cop, who writes on an orange slip and places it under the windshield wiper, give that guy a break. The signs are confusing, and it's the holiday season. Dear man on the corner of 64th and Lex selling cold churros. I'm not gonna buy one, but respect. Dear security guard who holds the door open for the pretty blonde girl. Respect. Dear pretty blonde girl who runs through the doors into the arms of another beautiful woman. Respect. Dear pretty brunette on the elevator, also going from the 3rd to the 11th floor. Dear elevator doors, please open before I make this even more awkward. Dear self, stop writing letters in your head and start speaking up. Dear invasive thoughts, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Dear Instagram, thank you for showing me that my ex doesn't look as good now as when we were together. Dear likes on Twitter, stop having me look toward you for validation. Dear child on the Staten Island Ferry, you should not be awake at this hour. It is far past the bedtime I have assigned to you. You have the spirit of Times Square on New Year's Eve, and I cannot stand this city during the touristy months. But I do envy you. You are a tourist in the places you visit on your daily routine. You speak to people like your imaginary friends, gentle and wholesome. You run in the vortex of a circle, and each lap you treat like an accomplishment. You meet the night's dark with the juxtaposition of a smile. I do not know what it was for, but please, keep smiling. I'm going to do like 2 more, if that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay.
Cool, thank you. This next one's just kind of like how I was thinking. A lot of people are not happy with the winter coming, but I think when the seasons change, it's great because it kind of brings out sometimes the best in people, even if we don't really think it at the time. This is called winter weather. During my pretty much monthly phone conversation with my grandmother, she explains to me that she does not understand how it can be so cold. I tell her, I don't know, I kind of enjoy the winter weather. She does not understand. And in a way that only an older Jewish woman can make an opinion feel like an insult, she exclaims, enjoy winter weather? I don't understand it. My grandmother lives in Florida. She does not have to understand it. But me, I begin to think. Maybe it is because I look phenomenal in a knit hat. I mean, it would be criminal for me to live in a tropical environment. Maybe it is because peacoats remind me of Paddington Bear, and Paddington Bear reminds me of my mother. Maybe it is the way the frosty weather blankets the sidewalks of the streets, how it tucks in the unadventurous, how it gives those with no time to observe a chance at full scenery. Or maybe it is the way that winter weather reveals those who truly care about me. The people that were there all along like mittens that sit in the back of a coat closet, dormant, but there when I need them to be. On the first day of winter, I wake up to a text message in my friend group chat. My buddy John writes, "Yo fellas, it's cold as tits out there. Bundle up, boys." Just as the first flurry of the season silently sits upon the windowsill, my grandmother from Florida calls me to tell me it may or may not snow. Thank you, Grandma. In the light of the first snow bomb of the season, school is canceled, travel suspended. I look outside to see a glow of white. As I'm watching the snow fall, my grandmother calls to tell us that it is in fact snowing. You gotta be careful on the roads, don't leave the house unless you need to. Thank you, Grandma. On the same day of this bomb, my dad explodes into my bedroom. When you have a car, you have to be responsible for it, he says. I just shoveled out 2 cars, and you're still laying in bed, he says. His pants are drenched, his nose dripping. I say nothing, pull the covers over my head, and go back to sleep. A few hours later, I'm ready to dig out my car. As I am lacing my boots, my father approaches. Where are you going? I'm going to dig out my car. As I search my coat pocket for the keys, he places them on the table. It's already done. I kind of enjoy the winter weather, how it reveals those who truly care about me. And now this next one is as I was saying before, I have a group of students who I teach creative writing to. And they're really great and they're really cool. And I took them last year. Every year I take them on this writing excursion. And I teach in the city, so we're not too far from Central Park. So I took them to Central Park one day. And we stopped at these different sites and I told them to write. I told them to write about what inspires them. I told them to describe the scenery. I told them to think about what was going on, what people's stories might be in the park, right? New York City, a great place to do that. And so I did the assignment myself. And I came up with this. I saw this kid by the fountain in the park, by the pond, and he was fishing. And he was with his mom. And it was also during the school day, so I was like, oh, he should be in school. What's going on with that? And I created this whole story for him. And him and his mom were the main characters. It's called Bethesda. The first time Dad took me fishing, I was too young to remember. Too young to think that it had any meaning at all. So I'm lucky that I have you to do something about it. He took me to a pond, the name of which I can't recall. He brought me to a rock, a place I never really left. With bread in the hook, he released away the perfect cast, the formation of a dancer moving in the most liberating synchronization. He caught a largemouth bass, and it fought. And we thought that this was the greatest accomplishment. You told Dad that it was. And he held me up, his banana bunch hands under my arms, his arborescent arms branched towards the sky. He looked at me, he looked at you, as he said, no, this is the greatest accomplishment. Dad is no longer here. And on the anniversary of his death, you take me fishing. In 15 years, we have not caught one thing. This year, the 16th year is different. We're in Central Park. It is a Friday. You take a sick day from work. You let me skip school. We are at the pond beside Bethesda Fountain in an oasis surrounded by concrete jungle. And just like Dad, I hook bread as bait. And then, with less form than Dad, I cast. 30 minutes pass. You yank my tank top, say, let's leave, but 90 means nothing to me. Then the rod shakes, stops, shakes again with more urgency this time. I pull, firmly reel like mad, and there it is. My first catch. I look you in the eyes. This is the greatest accomplishment. You stop me mid-sentence. Touch my cheek. No. This is the greatest accomplishment. On our walk through the Central Park Mall, a sax player plays Dad's favorite Sinatra song. You're lovely, never ever change. And I know that Central Park is the place that we will never really leave. Thanks. I just have one more. And this one is kind of like one of those letters to someone who will never read it. And it's because this person didn't stick around long enough to read it, but it's really sweet. It's called Easy. Your face became a springboard for my kisses. Your torso, a baseball mitt for my hug. When I come home at the end of a long day, I'm ready to tumble into bed. I used to feel as if I was perpetually trying to fall asleep, never exactly hitting the sheets, failing to rest my head on anything solid. That is until you asked me how my day went, and you talked me goodnight, and I was able to rest easy. Really great. I'm glad all of you are here. All of these are sort of part of this collection of poems that I've been writing that's going to be called Answers to the Wind. And it's because it's kind of like all these things are kind of just advice to either myself or my past self or my future self or people that I will never really know. And I don't know if anyone will sort of take this advice, so I don't even know if I'll take it. So it's called Answers to the Wind. And my name is Zach Katz again. And you can find me on Facebook. My name on Facebook is Zach, Z-A-C-H, space A-R-Y, space Ryan. That's my middle name. And I did that to hide from students, but it didn't work. But hopefully, so you'll probably be able to find it easily. Thanks a lot, guys. And I can't wait for the other writing.
Okay, again, our shy guy is done, so we can turn the camera back on. Sarah, thank you so much for reading that. That was heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching. Thanks for that. I think Katinka's going to make me cry later, so this is going to be great. So, Ken, I think our next one up is our video reading. Since Tom is not here due to travel, I'm actually going to give you a short bio on him. Tom Lettieri is a very, very interesting fellow. He's a charming misanthrope, as I've said on Facebook, and he is a basketball aficionado. So currently what he's doing, and the reason why he is not here today, is because he's traveling around America talking beef to a bunch of people playing basketball and seeing if he could beat them or not, and then writing about his experiences. If that gives you a good idea of what his writing is going to be like, there you go. Today's story is short but sweet and also hilarious. Tom talks about the difficulties of trying to share one's plain snacks. Ken, when you're all ready, we're all ready.
It's called Sitting Alone in Places. I was going to offer the guy sitting next to me some of my Pringles. It was going to be a long flight. We were seated next to each other. But what was the point? I mean, it was the start of a new adventure. I could have transformed into the guy who offers his Pringles to strangers. I could have been that guy. But what was the point? It was true. I worked singing coffee for a while. A good while. I liked making coffee. Lattes and shit. There was an art and science to it. And not having to pay for coffee was fantastic. What I didn't like was other humans ordering coffee at my face. They would order then say things like, "Don't look so happy to be here," or "You sure look happy to be here," or "One of those days." And it usually wasn't one of those days. They spoke words to my face about the angry look on my face. But that was just my face. Couldn't help it. So I could have a normal, annoying workday until some asshole threw around their sarcasm about the level of my face happiness. Then I'd go from having resting angry face to actually being pissed off. If she was a pretty girl, I would have offered her some Pringles. But what was the point? I suppose it could set me off on the right foot, new adventure, new me. But I wasn't desperate enough to change yet. She probably would have declined anyway, and I would have felt like a complete moron for years. I never knew where I stood with girls. I knew that some very attractive girls in my past were attracted to me, but the vast majority of females did not seem to notice my being a human nail in this fire. Was it that the symmetry of my face only appealed to a small percentage of girls, whom I also found appealing? Or did my angry seeming disposition raise red flags in most girls' eyes? Were they thinking, "He sure looks happy to be here"? Or were they thinking nothing, because my existence did not register with them? I wanted to offer the stewardess some Pringles. She was extremely beautiful, but I didn't mean to do that. I wasn't that dumb. I knew how that looked. She was paid to acknowledge my existence. And just because I was becoming desperate didn't mean I had to broadcast it to a plane full of strangers. This was going to be a solo adventure through a bunch of places where I wasn't familiar with the native tongue, so I wouldn't be speaking much with the general public, which was good. I was, however, going to make a concerted effort to smile more often, so even if I wasn't speaking with people, they'd be thinking, "What a pleasant American," or they'd be thinking, "Why is that lanky American showing his teeth to everybody?" Either way, I wouldn't be able to understand them, so I'd give it a go. Maybe. I knew the Pringle offering wasn't paramount. I knew that. but it felt like it was. It felt like I didn't offer anyone that goddamn planes and Pringles. And for 2 months I'd hop around from hostel to hostel, unable to offer anyone a snack, or even merely say hello to my fellow travelers. This plane ride would set the tone. Someone else had to eat some of these fucking chips.
Tom would like me to let you folks know that you can find some of his travel basketball writings at Senor McFunk at WordPress.com, and I'll be posting that link on the Edgewater page. I got to sneak some of the writings that he posted up today, and they were really good. They're very much in the tone of this last story. So our next writer up is a painter who uses her synesthesia from experiencing music to make her paintings, and they are surreal, alien, and beautiful, and her writing is equally as haunting. So with her memoir piece here to read to us tonight, Katinka.
Hi, I'm Katinka Satar. I generally do acrylic painting. I also do pen and ink drawing. Can you hear me? I'm good?
Yeah.
Okay. Pen and ink drawing as well. A lot of my influences come from basically the music that I listen to. Also, a lot of my personal history experiences. I was born and raised in Long Island in a town called Huntington. So what I'm actually going to be reading today is going to be something that has been kind of carrying through in my work over the years. I do have some of my work stationed kind of by the back over there.
By the sign-in sheet.
Yeah, by the sign-in sheet that kind of showcases what Hauntington and Huntington is for me, and having grown up in that town, and why I actually call it Hauntington and not Huntington. So this is Hauntington. So let's take a trip down memory lane to a place that burns in my mind and heart like an open wound. Expectations of life torn asunder. There was death here. Lots and lots of death. It was a place to which I sometimes still return. I have bittersweet memories, and they come flooding back like the naivety of youth, of wanting things to be a certain way, and not seeing the reality of it all. A microcosm, a fishbowl of sorts. We all gazed out from behind this imaginary glass, not knowing what was beyond, unsure if it was something that was even inhabitable. It was up to us to take the chance. It was up to us to run with scissors and pierce the protective bubble. In some ways, it was an escape. For others, it was self-rescue. But after all the dust settles and we move on, there's this quiet longing to return to a life once lost. There were so many forks in the road, so many twists and turns, much like James Hill and Sweet Hollow Road. One can get lost. Will we ever find our way back home? Some things can make you run and never look back. Like finding a disemboweled raccoon at the park gates after dark when you're just looking for a good time. It's still in all of our eyes, a longing to return to simpler times and simpler minds. The heart and mind are tricky, and we remember what is sweet, but we try not to remember the pain. And it is the sweetness that actually hurts us, the longing for the fond memories to return. I can get lost for hours on memory lane, but now I must return from the old stomping grounds to my life. Yeah, so that's Hauntington. The original... book tag you'll see back there. That's actually from 1996, so original 90s. Woo. And then the other drawing was something that I actually did last January when a friend of mine got me into reading H.P. Lovecraft. So you'll see some Lovecraft kind of illustration with the trees and the wells, and it kind of looks a little creepy like that to kind of pull in the concept of being haunted by Huntington. Most of my art, you can find it all on Instagram at Ravenna Night. I do have business cards if anybody's interested. Yeah, thanks.
You promised you weren't going to make me cry, and you did. I'm going to hold that against you.
Alright.
So our next reader is another wonderful woman that I go way back to college actually. She is a arts and entertainment and also human interest journalist at our local institution and newspaper, the Staten Island Advance. Victoria is responsible for making people on Staten Island interested in real stuff like art and literature, and also our local businesses. So Victoria Marguerite Priola, if you could step up and read to us.
I'm so sorry.
And folks, there is not only a sign-in sheet for newsletter updates and email updates about our next reader selection up at the front, but also Katinka's artwork. So if you'd like to pass it by and take a look through on your way out, please do.
Hello, how are you? Everybody? Oh, great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Gab, for inviting me. I thought I was coming to cover this event, and she was like, oh, by the way, you have a 10-minute slot, and I was like, great. I panicked, so I'm still panicking. It's okay. So for the last 4 years, I've been telling other people's stories. I've actually been writing my own as well. I have one piece because it's like, I'm writing this sort of book that I'm trying to make out of my experience with losing a parent at a teenage year. On January 3rd, 2013, I lost my father, and he was 53 years old, and I was 18. So we were both super young, and yeah, this was my little snippet of my experience with that. The book is coming about, but who knows when it'll be released. So this is my first time reading anything from that time, so be gentle. Okay. I'm currently writing this entry from my childhood bedroom. The one that was at a time painted blush pink with flower stickers and pictures of Barbie on it. As years passed, flowers bloomed into posters of the Jonas Brothers, Hannah Montana, and basically any other teen pop sensation that was out at that time. I've grown in this room. You've raised me in this room. These walls have seen our laughs, our fights, our tears, and everything in between. This room has felt like home to me for the last 18 eventful years. And now you're gone. And to me now, this room is back to what it's always really been. Just 4 walls. At 21 years old, I decided to call this room home again. I bought new posters, new stickers, new paint. I continued to cover and replace all of the things inside this room that would acknowledge the space you've left in my heart. When all is done, I stood back and looked at my new home. The go-to spots that I would use in our games of hide and go seek were replaced with bookshelves and work desks. The window I put my ear to when eavesdropping on a conversation about how fast your cancer was actually spreading is partially blocked by a full-length mirror. The photos of us around my room are no longer freshly colored and spread across my desk table. They are faded in a frame reading in memory of. I guess this is growing up.
So the piece that I'm currently reading is from the 5th chapter of my book, Creeps Anonymous. Just as a little context, so you're not, plugged in as soon as you don't understand what's going on. Olivia is the main protagonist. She's about to meet the other main protagonist. She just doesn't know it yet, and she's currently going through a lot. But the thing she's currently just come off of is her father offering to have her come live with him and his very young girlfriend, who is basically Olivia's age, and he wants her to call her mom. She, of course, is no. The chapter is called "Killing Me Softly." If you like 90s R&B, this is gonna really, I love you, Lauryn Hill. Olivia sat with her hands on the steering wheel, contemplating pulling away from the curb and driving farther than she'd ever gone before, as far as her tank of gas could take her. It would be like those old crime flicks where she threw a scarf out the window and hurtled out the state doing 90. She'd start all over again in some mountain town, waiting tables, maybe change her name. Her fantasy was cut short when she remembered exactly how far she could get on a tank of gas, and how many dollars she had left in her pocket to get the gas. Olivia tried swallowing down the lump in her throat as she locked up. The glass door of Anything Goes bookshop rang overhead as she passed through, walking into the eccentric crowd milling up front at the counter. The lunchtime regulars here were masochistic at best. It surprised her the extent to which people could wait for their bagel, standing and looking longingly over the counter at the languid baristas who laboriously spread hummus over the sandwiches. It was homemade. She wove around the throng of people to the back of the shop where they kept the books and records for sale. There was a stale smell that permeated all the goods here, not one of incense, but the smell of previous ownership. It was like perfume to her, musky and comforting, like an old flooded library. She found herself hanging back from the books, eyes grazing over the small corner of music. Olivia wandered up the short flight of steps, stepping around the old, worn, overstuffed chairs and randomly placed end tables, stacked with old VHS tapes. She perused the wares until she came upon the record section, where she found herself thumbing through the cases of dusty vinyls. She had a record player from their gutted house that she supposed still worked, though it had been a while since anyone had shown her how to use it. She grabbed it mainly out of posterity. Exploring the cardstock sleeves, she passed up Nat King Cole's Christmas album, soundtracks to movies she'd never heard of, and various selected works of Dolly Parton. She did this all through the cases, blindly searching for something to stand out. That was the thrill of the thrift. She never knew what she was looking for, but she nearly always found it. She pressed herself into the corner of the crated records section, her bag zipper digging against her kneecaps. Broadway duets, sounds of the gamelan, a previously owned Bluegrass Masters box set. She looked up to the dusty rafters for a moment and sighed, looking for a sign. For what? She didn't know. Nearing the end of the jazz collection, she stopped at one that caught her eye. It was dusty, still in its original plastic seal. She lifted it out of the case and regarded the black and orange cover. It was a simple enough design, contained no photos of the artist that she could see on the outside. The most prominent text on it read, "Getz Gilberto." She turned it over in her hands, brushing off years of dust. There was very little information on both the back and front, which she found maddening. She found the price tag, $14. It was more than she had stashed away in her wallet after pancakes. Suddenly, $14 seemed a whole lot more expensive when her measly Key Food paycheck wouldn't cash until next week. Her father's words came back to her unbidden. "I deserve a little appreciation." She felt the anger bubble up in her gut in its familiar way, numbing the tips of her fingers. Its icy creep up her arms and chest made her check her momentary, white-knuckled vice grip on the sleeve. If he deserved appreciation, she thought with chagrin, then she deserved a record for her troubles. Her eyes scanned the store around her, keeping watch for any other people in the area. She found them mostly congregated by the register, with a few others scattered by the children's New Age literature. Biting her bottom lip, Olivia slowly lifted the flap of her messenger bag. She took another look to make sure no one was coming, and began to lower the record towards her bag. Shockingly, it looked like it would actually fit without much squeezing. Feet thundered up the short flight of stairs without warning, making her jump. She pulled the record out in front of her, pretending to regard it. A man in flip-flops loudly made his way over to the records in a single-minded swoop, fingering through the selections as if he were looking for something very specific. The peculiar man went from case to case, decisively pushing back dusty sleeves and humming to himself while he did, like she wasn't even there. It was early April, and his flip-flops had a thin white layer of dust from the salt of last week's snow, He wore no jacket, just an oversized Hawaiian tee in a reprehensible shade of pink, flapping loosely over a pair of cutoff jeans. His getup looked like cold toes and frozen fingers. She tried to catch a glimpse of how old or how young he was past his nest of brown hair, but the mass of curls was impenetrable. Really, most of what you could see was the jut of a very prominent nose and the sharp corner of a scruffy Adam's apple. He looked like some sort of pirate that had finally found his way to retirement. Olivia looked at the record in her hand, deciding that he probably hadn't seen her pathetic attempt at lifting it. She gave it one last sad brush with her palm and put it on top of the case. "That's a good record," the man said suddenly as she turned around. "What?" "That record," he said, turning to her. It was then that she realized he was much younger than she'd expected, and that he had very wry, sane-looking eyes that really looked into someone. She couldn't help but squirm secretly under his intense gaze, feeling like he knew exactly what she'd been trying to do. "Getz and Gilberto, great bossa nova tunes. You should give it a listen," he said. "Maybe next time," she said, discreetly placing the flap of her bag back down. "Excuse me." Her heart hammered in her chest, wondering if maybe he had seen her trying to lift the record. Sure, her aunt's place wasn't any fun, but she didn't want to spend her night in a jail cell. She nodded politely, making her way down the steps. Her only course of action now was to act as if she were simply perusing. If she counted to 10 and he didn't out her thiefdom to the store, she'd be fine. It seemed less suspicious if she didn't leave right away. Pretending to let a cookbook catch her eye, she snatched it off the shelf and made a show of studying a page at random. She flipped to another before allowing her eyes to wander over the cover of the book and up the steps to her observant friend. The vacationing pirate looked straight at her, over the postcard table and the comic book section. His eyes were unreadable but undeniably scenery chewing, making everything else in the cram cafe seem like white noise compared to the green prison searchlights trained on her from above. The look on his face was half mirthful. Putting the book down, she wandered over to the flyers on the front counter, palming through them as if they had escape routes printed on them. She cocked her head back to see if he was still watching her. Reliably, his eyes were still on her. Maybe, she thought, he hadn't caught her trying to steal at all. It was possible, too, that he could have had a stroke, gone temporarily blind, and somehow found her attractive. Just maybe, his comments could have been construed as appraising and not accusatory. For all she knew, he could have just wanted to talk to her. All she had to do to confirm this was look up. If he was still staring, then he had a thing for her. Olivia gathered herself, taking a short breath. She lifted her eyes to catch his gaze full on. He gave her a bemused smile from across the store, tilting his head to one side like an inquisitive, shaggy-headed dog. She returned his smile with her own grin, feeling something sleepy inside of her unfold, yawning. She winked across the store, giving him a subtle wave goodbye as she slipped into the bathroom for a moment's time. Elbowing the light on, Olivia washed the dust off her hands and grinned at the haggard reflection in the mirror, feeling invincible. Through a crack in the door, she gave a cursory peek before stepping out. She patted her hands in her jeans, finding them difficult to adequately dry. On her way out of the store, she passed her supposed admirer, awkwardly drying her hands on the way. He looked perfectly demure, purchasing things up at the lunch counter. She gave him the slip and made her way out. The second the shop door closed behind her, she broke into a full, victorious smile. The world was her oyster. And she didn't need any impassioned vinyl hounds tagging along. She couldn't help it. "Hey, Sticky Fingers," someone shouted from behind her. She stiffened, making sure to turn slowly, as if any sudden moves would result in immediate beheading, or behanding, as it were. The man in the Hawaiian t-shirt stood before her, a plastic bag in each hand. He had an awkward edge pretty much everywhere she looked, from the Adam's apple to the pointed tips of his elbows. Somehow, he seemed taller, if not framed by the cobwebbed rafters and the overstuffed bookshelves. "Theft is illegal, you know," he said, lifting the round mirror shades off his crooked mountain range of a nose. I'm sorry," she said. "Theft, shoplifting," he explained, as if she were a Martian. "I saw you try and take that record. You know, they're a neighborhood mom and pop. They're the real victims here. These businesses are really struggling." Olivia paled as he began to verbalize his disdain, towering over her in full emblazoned shirt glory, the pink of his shirt the exact color of what she was feeling, boiled and raw and nauseous like a late-night bottle of Pepto-Bismol. Impatient, she began to shift from foot to foot, looking for an exit to dash to her car. "Look, sir, I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't end up taking anything." "I should have just said something to the owners. I don't know what I expected in confronting you," he deflated, looking disappointed. "See, that's exactly what I hate about people. Mediocre, and no willingness to take responsibility for anything. Folks just take and do whatever they want. It doesn't really matter in the end. He crossed his arms, turning away from her. The flimsy plastic bags around his wrists swung like big black crow feathers flapping in the wind. Olivia stopped cold, feeling like the words that were coming out of his mouth were dropping right out of her head. It felt alien to have them spoken to her after feeling like the universe generally had stopped keeping tallies long ago, that nowadays it was just karmic anarchy. Ashamed, she ground out, I'm sorry. What? He turned back to her. I said I was sorry. I didn't have enough cash to buy it outright. Oh, he said suddenly, softening to her honesty. I was just trying to give you a chance to come clean and buy it back inside. Is that what you were doing? She said, half stunned. I thought you were just bad at minding your own business. His rueful laugh was more of a bark than a chuckle, his unbuzzed cheeks stretching sideways as he sucked his teeth. That's probably true. I don't get out much. He took a moment inexplicably to rifle through his purchases before stretching out his arm to hand her one of his bags. Either way, I think it's probably a good thing. Here. She looked at the bag as if it would eat her, unsure what exactly was in it and why this crazy man had chased her down the block to make sure she got it. Go on, he said, sticking it out to her. She gingerly took the handles of the bag, peering inside. It was a square, flat thing wrapped in plastic. For a second, her brain failed to process what she was looking at. Olivia pulled the bag handles inside and found the record she tried to lift. She looked at him in abject disbelief, shaking her head. Why? It's a good record, he repeated himself. You should really listen to it. With that, he turned on his heel and loped away like a daddy-long-legs, his spindly limbs carrying him far without a great many steps. Fine, I'll listen to it, she called out, waving the bag. Instead of turning, he simply lifted his hand from one of his pockets and held it aloft in a lazy wave goodbye. After a moment, he became lost in the colorful foot traffic of Little Bay, slipping back into the woodwork of the town. Olivia watched for signs until she was sure he was really gone, wondering where in the hell he'd come from with that kooky getup and the chip on his shoulder, and how he'd instilled in her a feeling that she was sure didn't have a name. Somewhere on the cosmic radio, the dial had slipped into a channel that had finally sprung to life. Over the airwaves, she could hear a language she hadn't spoken with anyone in a long time. Thank you. What's going on with the book. I'm going to be posting some excerpts here and there, and also there's a Patreon link on there as well. You can visit me at yeahyankee.com. That's yeah, like the word yes, and Yankee like the team. Thanks, folks. We are like the arts literary supreme team. You are filled with manic energy of creation, and every time I'm around you, it's like a creative whirlwind, and we talk very loudly together. That's always a good sign. You make me feel energized, and every time I leave seeing you, I just want to make more stuff. And this reading series was actually probably fueled entirely by just talking to Jatik once on the phone. So I cannot wait for him to take off his freaking jacket.
I want to keep it on.
Like you're like a roommate. It's like you don't live here anymore. I don't understand.
I just want to wear it. It's cold now.
Jatik Long reading his poetry.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
I go to.
when you're ready, we're ready.
Okay.
Okay.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jatik Long. It's nice to meet you. So, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading a few poems. I don't really talk like that, but would it be cool if I did? Everybody knows, like, you don't sound like that. Thank you for having me, Gabriella. And my bad for being late. Like, I feel like, who the fuck am I? Like,
That didn't happen.
yeah, exactly.
That didn't happen.
So, oh, that's weird. Alright, so the poems that I have for you guys I'm going to read are kind of sporadic, like thought-wise, but most of them, I write like a lot of love poems. I'm a lover boy. And because, yeah, you can snap for love. You can snap. Love is great. Love is awesome. The first poem I'm going to read you guys is called You Really Liked Her, Huh? It's a reason. I'll tell you the reason why I'm going to read it to you, so to hit a little bit more. Recently, a friend of mine, a lady friend of mine. She came in from Arizona, and I basically supported her entire trip. She was here for 2 weeks, and we probably hung out like almost like close to every day with those 2 weeks. And I'd be lying if I say I liked her, you know? It's the other word is too strong to just be saying that in 2 weeks, but like, you know, love is love. Alright, so you really liked her, huh? Liked is an understatement. I thought of her more than she did me, and all I have are rose-colored memories. I liked her, maybe borderline loved her. But I only turned to knife myself because when it came to love, she didn't want my help. She told me she couldn't see her and me. What I thought we had was only a memory, a spark that gets to die out. You really liked her, huh? Maybe borderline loved her. That's why I feel this way. I can't see her for a while. My feelings will get in the way. To be in love with someone that doesn't love you back is traumatic. It sounds dramatic, but think of the dynamic. He loves her, she loves him not. She moves on to a new love, he's stuck on an old one. She listens to him confess, she doesn't care. All he wants is for her to care. All he wants is a chance, and she's not one for luck. You really liked her, huh? Love is the better word. I let her go knowing she won't come back. Just go get the best. Don't settle for a man that just wants to see your ass and breasts. If you say no to me, I accept. The way I treat you is what you should expect. Especially from a man that loves you. Open your eyes. You'll be surprised what you'll see. Blinded by some fantasy that you could turn them good. Don't do it to your heart. Be with someone that just wants you, to hold you down when you get the flu, to travel to the moon and back just to give you lunch and a snack. I know she doesn't love me the way I love her, and I still wish her the best. You really like her, huh? Liked is an understatement. Disclaimer, my homie from Arizona didn't make me write that, because like, that's totally contradicts what I said beforehand. You know the greatest part about this poem? Under it, it just says the date, and then says A. I don't know why. Like, that's so dope. So I have another one called Snow Sabotage. I think it's a responsibility for creatives. I should have took my jacket off. I think it's a responsibility for.
You should just listen to me.
I know. Don't be such a mom. I think it's a responsibility for. So I want to apologize for all the creatives that I missed that came up here, but I want to tell you that thank you for doing what you do, because I think that you have a amazing skill. And you see, I said skill, not talent. I said skill because you went and you developed your shit. You don't say, oh, look at that. Like, damn, I had one yesterday when I was talking and ranting. But, like, you know, for any other discipline, you call it, it's a skill, you know? Like, if you are a mechanic, oh, you're a barber, you're a hairstylist, or you go to your barber, hairstylist, you don't say, yeah, man, really talented barber. Nah, you just like, my barber's nice. You know, they did a great job. You know, that's like one a cookie cutter example. But I think it's very important for creative people to kind of, especially the ones that have a platform, to own that platform because of the influence of what they do. You know, like this next piece is called Snow Sabotage because we have a bunch of. So it can be slightly objective to a point, but music is very, it's in a weird place. And like, you know, some of the artists who have this influence, they're not using their platform responsibly. And it's Snow Sabotage. So that's what this piece is about. It's funny how there's no knowledge in the charts. Like Billboard, it's advertised. I'm surprised y'all ain't sick of these guys falling into the fabric lies, acting brain dead to what is televised. Open your eyes and listen. You call this music? Stay present, don't fall asleep. To ignore is weak. We're tuning into Snow Sabotage. What's the message? Even the DJs don't want to play it. The format is archaic. So why are you betraying the ones who can't create? Your job is to lead the way, yet you stray away from your purpose. One left in the fire, will it be worth it? I got another one that's like, fuck the establishment. I think you guys might like. So, like, how many of you guys like Hollywood and what they do? Why are you lying, David? Nah, sometimes Hollywood does some cool things.
Next back.
Yeah, you know, thank you. But you guys notice how these two, they're just like, yeah, okay, just put hands up.
It's a half-hearted way.
Right? Half-hearted.
Slightly sarcastic.
Yeah, exactly. So this piece is called.
supposed to heckle the audience.
I like to be warm with the audience because I am the audience too, man.
Boiling.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm sweating. I'm trying to be a comedian. I'm not. All right. So this is called Deaths of Hollywood. They asked me why I do this. Tell me what's the purpose. I do it for my hometown, so take notice. I could care less about fame, rather bring change. Rather bring real love, real art, real craftsmanship. Because if you ain't noticed, Hollywood ain't shit. Like NYC is the land of the rich. With fake news, TMZ just needs a weatherman. Fake culture, keeping up with a Kardashian. Fake woke, they do it just for the profit. If you ain't noticed, they kill all of our prophets. That's a Hollywood from a starving artist. That's a Hollywood that don't look like us. That's a Hollywood, they don't sound like us. That's a Hollywood. What happened to the artist? Society watches from a pedestal. They peddle fools down the assembly line, insert corporate greed, entertaining entities. Their lives become our remedies. But fuck their pain. We want their power. We want their fame. People in the crowd screaming out names, so you want to get noticed. But what about the price? Sell your souls to have others watch your life. Be a slave on paper to have a good life. Like, is it for the craft or for the limelight? I thought the point of art was to inspire life. We consume constellations but ignore galaxies. Radios block the transmission. At what point does a star get recognition? I don't see stars anymore, I see false light. Parading a false life, the game ain't right. People want change, but this bitch bite. Thank you. That's all I can do. Appreciate it.
Woo!
Guys, thank you very much, Jatik. I'm glad that you broke a sweat because you couldn't decide to take your jacket off.
That's because it was cold
Because
outside.
you worked yourself up in a jacket. That was really good. Thank you.
Actually, yesterday I didn't want Victoria to see my shirt.
I think Victoria will forgive you. So if you'd like to see any of this played back, or if you want to feel a little bit nostalgic over what happened yesterday or a week from now, you can catch this recording of all our readers and our performances on the Edgewater page, as well as the links to contact all the artists that you've seen here tonight. I thanked the artists all night, but I think that I have to thank you guys, because not only were they doing something brave by coming out here tonight and reading, but you guys were braving the cold. You guys are here. So we wouldn't have an audience, and we wouldn't be writing if it wasn't for people who enjoyed our stuff and who believed in what we did. So thank you for believing in what Edgewater is doing. Thank you for believing in these artists, and thank you for being here tonight. Have a wonderful time getting back home. Stay warm, and we'll see you next month. Take care.